Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to do a discussion video, which I haven't done in quite a while, but I've been getting some questions in the comments on my videos about how I read so much. And so I thought, it's a beautiful day outside. I've had to go to the dentist this morning and I'm done with all of that. So let's just film a nice little easy discussion video and talk about how it is that I read so many dang books every month. So I get this question a lot. I actually have been asked this question multiple times throughout my life. And the question, the actual reality of the situation is that I have been an avid reader since I was a little kid. Now, I was so incredibly excited to learn how to read when I was a young child, before I even started school, that I taught myself to read by memorizing a story in one of my storybooks. And it's kind of an apocryphal story in my family about how I believe that the story that I memorized was The Milkmaid and Her Pail. And I learned how to read by memorizing that and then using those words that I had memorized to read other things. So that by the time I was in first grade, or like 5 or 6 years old, I was already reading chapter books. And that was just my incredible desire to read. I've always wanted to read. I've always loved to read. I love to be read to. I love to read to other people. So that's the first thing that you need to know about me. And so I've been reading since I was 4 years old. And because of that, and because I'm an avid reader, reading is just like any other skill set that you have. The more you use it, the better you become at it, the quicker you become at it. So because I read so much, I just have gotten to be a very fast reader over the years. So that's one of the ways that I am able to read so much, is that I read very quickly. The only way you can take those speed reading courses or whatever. I've never done anything like that. For me, it's just practice. And I think the more that you read, the faster that you get at it, just because that's the way any skill set works, right? The more you practice it, the better you're going to be at it. The other thing is, and this is the biggest, one of the biggest reasons that I read so much, is that I prioritize reading over other activities. So reading has been my number one favorite hobby my entire life. And because of that, I choose not to do other activities in favor of reading. So we don't, especially in the summertime, or in basically from the end of winter until the end of fall, we don't have a TV service in my house. So we don't watch TV. I one-off will watch certain things that I'm interested in, like the Bridgerton series or something like that, on my daughter's Netflix account. And then in the fall, we like to watch football. And in the winter, we like to watch college basketball. And, I will watch various other sporting events, but I don't watch anything at this point in my life consistently. So I don't watch TV. I also don't, I don't go on the internet for in my spare time. So I don't participate in Facebook any longer. I have a Facebook account, but I just don't go on it. I rarely scroll through any other type social media things. I don't have a TikTok. All of this stuff I just don't do. I choose not to spend my time in that way. Instead, I choose to read during that time. So any of the hours that normal people would spend watching TV or just doodling around on the internet, that's not what I do. I just read. And so that frees up a lot of time for reading. And if you're a fast reader and you spend a couple of hours every day reading, you're going to get through a lot of books. The other thing that is one of the main reasons I read a lot is I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So my job requires me to drive quite a bit, particularly in the field season, which is from the spring through the fall. I drive a tremendous amount of miles. And instead of listening to music or anything else, I only listen to audiobooks or podcasts. So, and recently I've been really prioritizing audiobooks. I've been mostly listening to audiobooks over any other things I can listen to in the vehicle. I do subscribe to various bookish type podcasts, but my interest in those kind of goes in cycles. So right now I'm on an ebb part of that cycle, and I'm mostly listening to audiobooks. And so I can get through 4 and 5 audiobooks in a month, depending on, you know, the length of the audiobook that I choose to listen to. Right now I'm listening to a fantasy novel, and it's 31 and a half hours long, I think is the total. And so that's taking me a long time. But when you drive, you know, 3 and 4 hours a day during the work week, then you can get through a lot of audiobooks doing that as well. So that's another reason why I read so much. I also, when I want to flip back to the idea of this actuality in my life, that I don't watch TV very often, and I don't do much on the internet in my free time. And I have a very strict rule that I try to follow, that I have no screens an hour before bed, because I do suffer from insomnia, another way that I read so much. And I find that it's very helpful to me in my sleep patterns if I don't do anything with a screen an hour before bed. I think that's all the experts will recommend that, and I instituted it in my own sleep routine quite a while ago, and I find that it is very helpful to me. So I would suggest that at the very least, if you are the kind of person that enjoys doing things on screens in the evening, to stop that an hour before bed, to help you with if you have sleep issues like I do. And so that does lead me to say insomnia is another way that I read a lot. So I very frequently suffer from insomnia. Many nights in the month are nights where I'm up for 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the night, and I try to always have a book by my bedside table that I can dip in and out of. That's a good book to read and to try to help you. So I cannot read fiction at night because if I try to pick up a fiction or a novel in the middle of the night when I'm suffering from insomnia, I won't sleep. I'll just stay up until I finish reading the book. My dog's running around in the background. Actually, my daughter's dog is running around in the background, so just ignore that. So yeah, I try very much to have a nonfiction book on the go, or at the very, very most that I can read as far as fiction goes in the night is a classic. But I usually am working on some kind of a nonfiction book in the evening or in the middle of the night when I'm suffering from insomnia. The other thing to know about me is that my husband and I are empty nesters. Both of our children are grown and live on their own in their own establishments. And so all of the time that I used to spend taking care of my children or being involved in their activities, I no longer have to do. So that certainly frees up lots of time. My husband works. He works away from the house. I work from home now ever since COVID. And so that gives me, an hour and a half between when my workday ends and when he arrives home. That is, I'm either doing chores of some kind, or I'm filming videos and editing videos, or I'm reading. So that's great free time for me. Now, when my kids were young and still living in the house, of course, none of that happened. I read much, much less when my kids were young. And I had to fit it in amongst, parenting tasks and running around after their activities, because they both, played sports and were involved in all kinds of activities. So yeah, when your kids are grown and out of the house, that frees up a lot of your time, I find. And then the last thing I want to mention, one of the ways that I read a lot is especially now that I'm working from home, and it has been my preferred method throughout my life, is I like to read while I'm eating lunch. So I take a lunch break, and I invariably am reading a book during my lunch break. I sometimes, in fact, have a specific book that's only for reading during my lunch break, because I find, like, if I have a really fun romance novel or some other piece of fiction that I'm really is really entertaining and really enjoyable, I really like to save that for my lunchtime, because it gives me a nice break from work and sort of lets me clear my brain from the stuff that I've been dealing with during work time. So yeah, and I will also read at breakfast, although I don't during the work week because I'm in my morning routine before work. But if it's on the weekend or whatever, I like to read during breakfast as well. I know some people don't like to eat and read at the same time. I have never had that problem. I very much enjoy eating while I read. So yeah, that doesn't bother me at all. So these are the ways in which I fit reading into my life. And like I said, the biggest thing is that I make it the priority. It is the my number one favorite activity to be doing. So I'm going to prioritize that over pretty much any other kind of activity that I can be doing. And so I don't have any, I don't feel any kind of way about this. I don't feel like people should read more or people should read less. I feel like everybody should read whatever works for them, and I feel like it's an individual choice and an individual, whatever makes you feel good is what you should be doing. There isn't any prescribed amount of reading that you should do. I do think reading is beneficial to anyone. I think that there's lots of good things that can come from reading. So I always encourage everybody to read. But I don't think that there's necessarily any set amount that anybody should be reading. I don't think there's any judgment. I'm not trying to place any judgment on anyone else about this. And I don't think that there is in reality any judgment that can be made. It's a hobby like anything else. And it's all about balancing your hobby with all the other things that you have going on in your life, and whatever balance works for you in your life, then great. I will say that for me, reading is an activity that helps me mentally. It helps me decompress. It helps me feel less stress. It helps me relax. So I find reading to be extremely beneficial to me. On top of that, I learn something from every book I read. So, something that makes me feel good and also gives me, opportunity to learn. How can you go wrong with that? So I am glad for those questions in the comments that allowed me to sort of discuss my reading and why and how I read so much. And I hope that this answers the question for those of you who have been asking. And please leave any questions that you have about any of this in the comments down below, and I will talk to you later.